So I have made a startling discovery about the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, what I'm about to tell you next is going to sound insane, but I promise you, I repeat, I am not a crazy person. So after watching this movie multiple times, I am convinced that Rocket Raccoon is secretly the devil. Wait, don't go, I can prove it. So Guardians Volume 3 is great, an arguably perfect conclusion for the galaxy's favorite bunch of a-holes. But amongst these amazing character arcs and beautifully shot fight scenes, this movie also showcases some absolutely phenomenal religious imagery. Hey everyone, my name is Maxwell, and today we're going to uncover the secret symbolism of one of Marvel's best movies. Let's begin with the very genesis of the movie, that is to say, Adam. There have been a lot of reviewers who seem to think that Adam Warlock is superfluous to this movie, that he was only involved to make good on a post-credit scene and is really nothing more than a glorified cameo for fans. Well, I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. Adam Warlock is actually instrumental to the theme of this movie. If you pay close attention, you can see that Adam Warlock pays homage to two legendary pieces of Christian artwork by famed Renaissance artist Michelangelo. Towards the beginning of the movie, he pays homage to the statue, the Pieta, which depicts the body of Christ in the arms of his mother, the Virgin Mary, after the crucifixion. And the second occurs near the end of the movie, where alongside Star-Lord, he evokes the imagery of the creation of Adam, which depicts the first biblical man, Adam, receiving the spark of life from God, the Creator. Something very interesting about these religious references is that they're actually out of order. The death of Christ happens near the end of the Bible, but is depicted at the very beginning of the movie, just like how the creation takes place near the end. But why? Now, I personally take this as a sign from the creator of this movie, which is of course to say James Gunn. I think that what he's trying to demonstrate to the audience is that this movie is a biblical allegory, but in reverse. Which brings us to the main antagonist of this picture, the puppy-kicking supervillain that we all love to hate, High Evolutionary. Now, despite his very vocal assertion, "There is no God!" it's made very clear through the movie's symbolism that High Evolutionary is a dark reflection of the God of the Bible. This is made very explicit when he refers to Aisha as his High Priestess, and the line, "There are corners of the universe that consider him to be God," which is very appropriately told to us by Gomorrah, who is in fact named for the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, which were both destroyed by God in the Old Testament for being overrun with sin. So if she sounds afraid of this guy, she has a good reason to be. High Evolutionary fulfills his role as a perverted version of the Almighty by creating many races and beings throughout the galaxy. And just like how God governs the universe through the aid of his helpers, the angels, High Evolutionary also has his aides. They're also dressed in white robes, but instead of being called angels, they're called recorders. The most important of these recorders is known as Teal, whose name is significant because in the theology of the Abrahamic religions, the end suffix El is used to indicate divinity. For example, the angels Raphael, Michael, and Uriel. Speaking of angels, during your internet browsings, you may have encountered memes about biblically accurate angels, which lead you to images like this. Now, whether or not what you're looking at actually qualifies as an angel depends on which theologian you're talking to. However, this divine beast is still canon in the Christian religion and is called an ophanim. It is described in the book of Ezekiel as each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel, and all four rims were full of eyes all around. The High Evolutionary's laboratory, the orgoscope, definitely matches the description of being wheels intersecting wheels. And although they're not on the outside, it's also definitely full of eyes. Furthermore, when High Evolutionary is shown in a flashback teaching Rocket advanced mathematics, Rocket is depicted as doing the equations not from left to right as we would in the English-speaking world. He writes from right to left, which is consistent with languages such as Hebrew or Aramaic, which is the language that the Bible was originally written in. High Evolutionary proceeds to fulfill his role as a renegade version of God by destroying Counter-Earth. In the story of Noah's Ark, God, tired of the wicked ways of man, decides to start over by sending a flood to wipe out mankind so that he may start again. High Evolutionary, after likewise being confronted with the sinful nature of the society that he's created, once again demonstrates himself to be God's opposite by deciding to destroy his civilization through fire. So now you may be saying, okay, High Evolutionary as an evil god makes a certain amount of sense. After all, how can a man dress like that every day of his life and not have a god complex? But how could Rocket Raccoon possibly be our fuzzy little devil? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how. But if you're enjoying this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe so I can show you more symbolic secrets. So, according to most sects of Christianity, Satan, or the devil, was once known as Lucifer, one of God's most prestigious and favored angels. And it's clear that High Evolutionary favors Rocket over almost all of his other creations, even taking personal time to teach him, and notably, Rocket is the only one amongst his fellow experiments permitted to see the sky, until Rocket oversteps and tells his creator how to solve a problem that he himself is unable to figure out. In the biblical tradition, Lucifer falls from grace because he is prideful and wants to take God's place. In Guardians, Rocket falls from grace because he wounds his master's pride by surpassing his almighty intellect. This is demonstrated visually because when the experiments are shown to be a success, Rocket is illuminated by the overhead lights. But when he dares to think that he and his friends can share in this new world, High Evolutionary rebukes him, pushing him out of the spotlight, symbolizing his fall from grace. Light once again plays a symbolic role when Rocket is returned to his cell, because when he assembles a key card to free him and his friends, he raises it above his head and light shines around it. By the way, did I mention the name Lucifer translates to light bringer? And so our heroic version of the devil begins his rebellion against the evil god. Rocket is cast out of the kingdom of his creator and ends up in the seedy underworld of the galaxy. Now, at this point you may be thinking, wait, so God is the bad guy and Satan is the good guy here? Could it be that this movie is actually anti-Christian propaganda created by some sort of secret satanic cabal intent to destroy the very fabric of American? No, it isn't. I'm just playing around. I told you before, I'm not a crazy person. This movie is not anti-Christian or anti-religion by any means. In fact, the religious themes of this movie reach their peak when Rocket is on the verge of death and his soul reaches the cusp of heaven. He is greeted by his beloved Lila, who tells him while someday he will fly the infinite skies alongside his friends, but for now, he still has a purpose in this life. When Rocket points out that they were created by a madman for nothing, Lila states enigmatically that
there are the hands that made us, and then there are the hands that guide the hand.
Which seems to indicate that despite the seemingly meaningless tragedy of Rocket and his friends, everything that happened may have been part of a divine plan orchestrated by the real supreme being or God of the MCU, guiding events for the greater good. See, despite all the biblical symbolism, High Evolutionary is not actually God. He's not even a god by the standards of the MCU. He's just a mad scientist with a god complex, or, alternatively, a false god. So, it kind of makes sense that the devil of a false god would be the good guy in the story. After his death and resurrection, Rocket is ready to act as a fully realized messiah for his people. Seriously, later, when he's in the animal laboratory, we're treated to a wonderful parallel to our intro scene. Rocket approaches a cage full of baby raccoons, just like High Evolutionary did at the beginning of the movie, only instead of presenting himself to them as a cold, disembodied hand, the baby raccoons see the face of their savior, a face that almost looks as though it was made in their own image. Then comes the final showdown, where when the others are debating what to do, this bold rebel makes the decision to face down his tyrant creator. But Rocket isn't alone. He leads his friends to war against the forces of High Evolutionary, which by the way could easily be mistaken for the Legions of Hell, alongside his found family, the Guardians of the Galaxy, of whom both Nebula and Groot sport some very angelic-looking wings earlier in this movie, which shows that even though Rocket was playing the part of the devil in this bizarre inverse Bible story, he was always on the side of angels. After this metaphorical battle between heaven and hell, Rocket and the Guardians face down High Evolutionary. Once again, light plays a symbolic role because just as High Evolutionary stands illuminated and gloating, Rocket blasts him out of the light, dethroning this tyrant god. Rocket then proceeds to get all of the test animals out of the burning laboratory and onto nowhere, much like Noah gathering up all the animals and bringing them onto the ark to protect them from the flood. Rocket Raccoon, our heroic devil, has finally won the battle between heaven and hell and is thus freed from his past. And finally, there is the mid-credit scene where Rocket is seen leading the new incarnation of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Rocket and his Guardians are found in a vaguely Middle Eastern-looking space setting, defending a town from a flock of rabid carnivorous sheep. In the Bible, the followers of God are repeatedly referred to as sheep, with the Lord as their shepherd. And here we find our righteous version of Satan faced with protecting a town of people from an unhinged group of carnivorous sheep, which, for all we know, were created by High Evolutionary and then abandoned when they didn't meet his criteria. But now they serve as a stand-in for religious zealots. Rocket even says he does feel sorry for them, but the townspeople need to be defended against them. But what do you think? Am I crazy? Or am I right that Rocket's story is actually a secret allegory about the Bible's most famous fallen angel? Let me know in the comments, and if you noticed some symbolism that I didn't, please tell me, because in a movie this dense, I'm sure I haven't gotten everything. Thanks for watching, everyone, and remember, this is never the end. So I'll see you next time.